Hello and welcome to this presentation on Conservative Party education policy since 2015. This material has primarily been written for the AQA A-Level Sociology specification, and education policy since 2015 comes under the New Right neoliberal view, so it's a continuation of policies introduced in 1988. And I don't look at pandemic policies in this particular presentation, but you might want to consider those also. So while the Conservatives haven't fundamentally changed anything since 1988, they have amplified the policies introduced in 1988, so the marketisation policies. And since 2015, we've seen more austerity, we've seen more free schools and academies, we've seen an increasing number of grammar schools. One thing they have done to potentially improve equality of opportunity is continue the pupil premium, and at a more curriculum level we've seen a shift to the Ebacc from GCSEs and the introduction of T-levels to increase diversity and choice for post-16-year-olds. So I think we have to understand Tory education policy in the context of wider austerity, and education has been cut in real terms by 8% overall, with harsher cuts for 16 to 19-year-olds, and it's become increasingly challenging for schools to maintain standards given the relative decrease in funding. So at a curriculum level, we've seen a shift from the GCSE towards Ebacc, and the Tories hope that 95% of pupils are going to be doing the Ebacc by 2025, and there are claims that that might reduce diversity in the curriculum as non-Ebacc subjects like PE get axed in favour of Ebacc subjects. And T-levels were introduced in 2020, which give 16 to 19-year-olds an option to do something more technical rather than academic. It's a bit too early to judge the outcome of those because they've only been around for a couple of years. Just about the only thing the Tories have done to address equality of educational opportunity is maintain the pupil premium, and schools get an additional £1,385 per pupil per year for pupils on free school meals, and Ofsted monitors whether or not schools are actually spending this money to help disadvantaged students. This is one of the major policies, the expansion of academies and free schools, and the Tories started off in 2015 with a real push towards academisation, but this kind of stalled with the pandemic, with schools focusing more on safety and how to open successfully. So originally the government wanted all schools to be academies by the time I'm making this presentation, 2022, but there was a lot of opposition in the pandemic, and this means that progress has actually stalled. However, 80% of secondary schools are now academies, which means we probably aren't going to go back to LEA maintained and governed schools, but progress has been slower with primary. LEAs prefer more local management, as do parents, for primaries, but not so much secondaries. And we've seen a slight expansion of grammar schools under the Tories. This is something the critics say is done to please middle-class parents, and there are a number of claims made to support grammar schools, but there's also evidence that the claims don't match up. So it seems that grammar schools don't really do any better than regular schools, academies for example, or comprehensives. Free school meal pupils don't really do better. You can't really say they do better because so few free school meals pupils go to grammar schools. They're very selective, and what grammar schools do is increase segregation in local areas, because all the other schools effectively become secondary moderns, with the middle class kids going to the grammar schools and the more working class kids going to the other schools. But nonetheless, the Tories are in support of grammar schools. So on to evaluations. The main thing the Tories have done is carried on marketisation through more academies and free schools, and really now we can't reverse this. We've got a fully fledged quasi-educational market in the United Kingdom. Grammar schools have been expanded, seems to be about pleasing the middle classes. The Ebacc potentially narrows the curriculum. And the establishment of T-levels, we can say that's positive, but as I said earlier, it's really too early to judge. And here's a chart just showing you that there is some evidence that Grammar schools are selective towards the middle classes, so percent eligible free school meals, 15% in non-selective and only less than 5% in selective. Interestingly, more ethnic minorities attend grammar schools than non-white pupils. Right, so next steps. If you want to find out more about education policy since 2015, please visit revisesociology.com. And something you might want to do is look up how the pandemic has affected education policy, or rather the government's response to the pandemic, i.e. lockdowns and cancelling exams and that kind of thing. Okay, thanks for listening.